evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 10th, 2024 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. My name is Catherine Halpern. I'm Chair of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, which means both in person and remotely, and I'll be reading you a few points on that in just a moment. Also, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. I'll give you a few seconds in case you're connected remotely. And I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience. I don't see any hands raised, so we'll go ahead. So let's start with a roll call of the board. Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, present.
Bob Wirtschafter.
Bob Wirtschafter, present.
Frank Scherer.
Frank Scherer, present.
And Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, present.
And Charlene Greenhalgh.
Charlene Greenhalgh, present.
All right, and Art Spru is not joining us tonight. He is overseas. This is Catherine Halpern. I'm also present. And may I apologize in advance? I'm getting over a bad cold and a cough. So from time to time, I may need to not be talking. But that is why I'm remote for everybody's health. So regarding the hybrid format, pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL 30A 20, until March 31, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Planning Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while it's in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID number is 779-034-802#, or you may also join the meeting online using Microsoft Teams through the link that is in the agenda that is posted on the town website. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, formerly Chatham 18, as I mentioned, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. And as mentioned, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. So before we proceed to the first agenda item, I'll just ask the board members if there's anyone who needs to recuse themselves from any matter on tonight's agenda. There being no one, let's go to our minutes from May 20th, 2024. Does anyone have any corrections, additions, changes to the minutes? There being none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
Madam Chairman, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
On
I couldn't
page
see
2,
you,
where
Mr.
we're
Chain.
talking about 97 Sam Ryder Road,
Yes.
it was my clear understanding that we had as a condition that drainage from the downspouts be directed underground to the leach pits. I may be incorrect on that, but that was certainly the way I left the meeting on that understanding, but that's not what is reflected in the notes. It's in paragraph 4 and 6 on page 2.
All right, let's take a look. Notes. So where is the sentence you're looking at? The board members expressed some concern
About the
with the
downspouts
downspouts
draining directly on the pavement outside the building, and agreed to a condition that additional drainage will be installed to reduce runoff on the pavement. But
Yes.
my understanding was that we were going to have as a condition that the downspouts be directed underground from the building to the leach pits. Maybe the board is going to correct me, but that's my recollection, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah. I don't remember that we got that specific, but do other board members have a comment? And also, yes,
Madam
Charlene.
Chair, I actually made the motion on that, and I
Okay.
don't think I was that specific.
That's what I
Um,
recall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering if Katie might, or Annie might have what the decision actually stated. Because sometimes the minutes,
Yes.
are just a summation of a decision, and I'm just curious if we might know what was actually put in the decision, because that's the most critical thing. The minutes can say
Yeah.
whatever they want. If it's
Yes.
written in the decision in a particular way, that's what.
Yes. My memory matches Charlene's. I don't remember that we specified it, Warren, but we can ask the other board members. But Charlene is absolutely correct. What's most important is that the condition is stated correctly on the statement of conditions, and it's fine for the minutes to simply refer to the fact that we asked for additional drainage. That's completely all right in the minutes. So I don't know if, as Charlene requested, Annie or Katie, do you happen to have that document nearby or accessible?
Madam Chair, I'm trying to pull up the draft statement of conditions, if you could just give me a moment.
Sure, thank you so much.
Yes, Madam Chair, condition number 5, additional drainage shall be installed to limit the runoff on the pavement was the draft condition. We have not had your signature on this as of yet, but that was the draft condition that we put in the statement of conditions.
Okay.
And as I recall, that's what I stated when I was doing the decision and the conditions.
Yeah.
Well, then my
That's not-
recollection is incorrect, that we had decided that the additional, the drainage ought to be directed underground to the leach pits. Keep it off of the paved surface, which is going to go right up to the buildings. So we're creating a skating rink in the meantime. You add more drainage, it just doesn't change anything if it's on the surface. So, but at any rate, if I'm incorrect, I'm incorrect, so, thank you.
I think we discussed it, Warren, but we decided not to, as I recall, and again, open to other board members. As I recall, we discussed that and decided to leave it just that there would be additional drainage as appropriate, and with the obvious understanding that the water shouldn't be pooling on the paved area. So I think we actually made a conscious decision not to specify it that much, as I recall.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I think we recommended that it would be nice if they did that, but I don't think we forced it.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I agree. We decided not to force it, as Mr. Dubus says. Is everyone satisfied with that?
I move we accept the minutes as presented to us.
Thank you. Is there
Madam
a
Chair, I'll
to the-
second.
Great. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertheimer.
Bob Wertheimer, approve.
Frank Shearer,
Frank Scherer, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Charlene Greenhalgh,
Charlene Greenhalgh, approved.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we accept the minutes as drafted for the May 20th, 2024 meeting. So our next item on the agenda is a site plan review. This is for a Town of Chatham project. Our DPW Director, Rob Faley, I believe will be presenting. And this is for 85 Mill Pond Road. And this is for the demolition and construction of an existing wastewater pump and construction of a new wastewater pump station. Rob, would you like to go ahead and describe for the board what you are doing and what's been done?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll just give a brief overview, and I believe Jeff Gregg from GHD Engineering is in the audience in person today. So he may have a better navigating some of the more finer details of the construction. But this is basically a 50-year-old existing pump station that needs to be replaced. As we connect sewer to it, it's 50 years old. Design began back in 2016. We bid and awarded it in late 2023. The site is very constrained on all sides. Intersecting roads to the east, the ocean to the south, wetlands to the west, and private property to the north. And that we've been lucky enough to be granted an easement from the property owners to the north. The pump station is in a floodplain and a natural resource area. Variances we've previously received were from the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Conservation Commission. We recently received a variance from the State Plumbing Board not to add a restroom to this facility, which would have impacted the size incredibly. So we've had to try to minimize the construction, the size of this plan. And I know Jeff, I believe he's in the audience. I'm going to defer to him to go through some of the finer talking points about how we've reduced the size and all the considerations we've taken into account to try to reduce the footprint of this facility.
Jeff, would you like to go ahead and please introduce yourself completely? Thank you so much.
Sure. Jeff Gregg, GHD, project manager and project director for various aspects of this project. I was the project manager for the design, and now I'm the project director for the construction. Is it possible to pull up the existing site plan just so people could, I don't know if people saw that in the packet?
Yeah.
That one. So, let's see here. I think there's a laser pointer. So, basically you have I don't know, for those of you that are probably familiar with that postage stamp size site, you've got the walkway that goes out to the water, the pier, the quote-unquote landing, and then the intersection of Mill Pond and Homestead. And then there's like a little stone sort of wall with some stairs that heads up to what looks like a little concrete box, and that's your existing pumping station. And what I wanted to point out is this edge is pretty much the same boundary that we're holding on the next plan. So if you go to the next page, we're still staying within this curvature here is that same footprint, and this is the existing, it's not even a wet well, it's where their existing pumping system is located, and we're going to be using that for our wet well. And then we're essentially building back into the private property where we got an easement of a building to house the generator, because we needed to get, we were changing the pumping station process, and we needed to get a generator in there. We needed to get it above flood, but we were also trying to keep this as low to the ground as possible. So I think we had to get a variance because we exceed the overall height by 6 inches with zoning board. So I think this is 20 feet, 6 inches above ground to an extent. And then there's the stairs that go down, and then this is all the existing paving that's already there. So we're trying to work within that confined footprint and shoehorn this facility in. I think there's also a rendering that shows, so you can see the existing station in this picture. You can see what we're proposing, and then I believe a page or two before this is the actual color. There's some color renderings, or they may be, there you go.
Yes.
Kind of shows you a
Good.
general idea of what we're talking about. This door is actually just to go to basically a piping gallery below the station, and is designed for flood. So it's a flood door.
This
ahead.
is Catherine. I'm just going to interrupt.
Sure.
Is there any way you can use a pointer and show us which door and it,
Oh, sorry,
or
I
is
was
there-
doing it with a laser pointer, but I realized I don't have access to a mouse, so I'm not sure
the
how to.
computer pointer. Oh, that's okay, yes. So it's just that I can't see it. The board members in the room can see it.
So if the,
So
I don't
that's
know
all right. That's all right.
okay.
Go ahead then. Yeah.
So if you look at of the three images, if you look at the lower image, and if you look at the lower right-hand corner of that image, you'll see a little doorway where it looks like a little, red light above it. It's not red, but it's,
Yeah.
and there's a foot landing. That's the flood door to the basement, or the pump gallery. And then there's a door that's diagonal from that up on the upper level that goes into the generator room. It's basically all it is a generator and electrical equipment. As Rob indicated, we're surrounded by all these different conditions. And so we've tried to stay within as much of the existing footprint as we could, and then build back towards the upland as best we could to site the facility. Groundwater is anywhere from at ground level to, maybe 3 feet below it, when it's low, so there's no real provisions to do any additional stormwater. We were trying to do stormwater as part of the overall project further up Mill Pond and up Homestead. We're gonna be able to do some at the top of Homestead. We are still trying to determine, because of all the utility conflicts that we have and the number of utilities that we're putting into Mill Pond Road, to see if there's any possibility to pick up any additional stormwater coming down from there. But if it is, it's going to be well towards the top of the hill. And again, it's just because of the topography there, the depth of groundwater, and the fact that we're gonna have a gravity sewer, there's a force main, there's a water main, there's a gas main, we're gonna have an electrical duct bank, there's other underground utilities serving some of the adjacent homes, so there's not a whole lot of real estate. And if you're not too familiar with that road, I think it might be 19 feet wide, and if it is, it's a really tight 19 feet. It's very, very narrow road. I'm not sure if there are other things that the board would like me to discuss or point out with regards to the site layout for this facility.
Why don't we just, we'll go through the board and see if there are comments and questions for you. How's that? And I'll just point out some additional information on the staff report, that we haven't, let's see, you did go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think that was mentioned last year in August 24th. We haven't received comments from Police, Fire, Health, Conservation Commission. The staff report indicates we've received no comment, but you did mention that you did receive something from them.
We have
Can
an
you
order,
review that
we have an
first?
order of conditions for that.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So, Warren, did you have questions or comments for
well-
Jeff or Rob?
Well, just for clarification first, on the old facility, there's no generator involved in that. So what happens in a power outage in the past?
So it is it has an air compressor, and it's done by air pressure, and then, I'm actually not, I don't know, Rob, I'm not sure if I know what they
So
do.
actually, either town staff will, or consultant staff will arrive with a Vector truck and have to either suck it out or try to pressurize the system. It's
Okay.
it's not an ideal situation, and it's one of our kind of our weaker points to our operating system right now until we get a generator at this pump station.
And so the new proposal will in fact remedy that soft spot, shall we call it.
Yes, it will.
Correct.
You'd mentioned that it is a significantly higher elevation. There's been no comment from any of the butters with respect to the higher elevation of the building? or the potential for additional noise from it. I don't know what that might be. It would be the pumps or the generators.
So we had.
No comments?
So we did go through the zoning board and conservation, and the comments, the abutters understood the elevation of the structure. The person that's directly affected, their house sits well up on the hill, so they're kind of looking over and to the left of it from their property. And the other abutters were more concerned about the power lines and the trees in the area. And so power lines are getting removed and poles are getting relocated, and some of the trees on that corner need to be removed in order to construct the site. And then we're doing landscaping that we're going to work with the abutter that granted us the easement. We're going to be working with them to finalize what the final landscaping plan is, but we had proposed one that was the sort of the placeholder for that area. In terms of noise, right now, this actually should be quieter. The pumps just make a hum, and you will only hear it's only the generator noise when the generator turns on. So during a major power outage, everybody will have their generator on, but that will be, a noise impact, but
But the
only-
pumps
but
itself are likely to be quieter than what's there.
yeah, but right now, they actually will hear the, as I think David he pointed out, the sort of the whoosh of when the compressor kicks on, and so it's the sound of the compressor charging. So you get that noise right now, and this would just be when the generator has to be exercised. So there's a periodic exercise, and we usually program that around what the neighbors in the area would prefer, but usually it's on a Wednesday in the middle of the day, so it's not being exercised at night or early morning or things like that, where it'd be just, or in the weekends.
Thank you for that. One other thing, I noticed in the rendering of the photograph that's been doctored up to show the new facility, the power pole is missing. And I was wondering, does that mean that the utilities are going underground now? Because that would be nice in
Yes.
terms of the view and perspectives and so on.
So yes, the telephone pole at the corner is actually being removed, and that's why we removed it from the picture, and it is being moved further up the road, and then everything is going to be underground electrical utilities from that new pole down, and so it will remove the wires, which were the concerns of the neighbor here with the white picket fence, and the next neighbor up were both concerned about, the view and things like that as well. So they were happy that power lines were being
Well,
Yeah,
removed.
I think
I
that's a
think, Jeff, it's
significant
important to
improvement.
note. Yeah, I think it's important to note, sorry, just that was not part of the original plan, and it was, when we started working with the neighborhood and the property owners, that was, a design change that we felt would promote goodwill towards the neighborhood, and they've worked very closely with us to try to get that other utility pole out of their view shed, so it improved their view of Mill Pond.
Thank you for that. If I were the one behind the white fence, I think I'd be very happy with losing the utility pole, so thank you for that. Is there any attempt or going to be to, I don't know, screen the building or any of the facility there, or it's going to look basically the way this rendering likes it look?
Yeah, so what we did is, obviously, there's not much you can do to screen it from the ocean. So what we elected to do is the town went with it's like a stone facade. So we're actually going to have like a veneer or whatever you want to call that basically, so it looks not like a big concrete block or brick or something like that. So right now you kind of see that stone at the bottom, and then you see this concrete thing that sticks up, and now we're going to be doing it all with stone. And then the building itself is the white AZAC trim, PVC trim with the hardy plank to look like cedar shingles, so it'll be similar to other stations that we have around, and then it's just a black asphalt roof, so it looks, it's a Cape Cod style finish as best we could, and then there'll be plantings on the upland side, and then we just basically have to do wetland restoration, for the grasses and things on the east side. So there's not much we can do to really screen it. So we've tried to make provisions, but it's as you know, there's not a whole lot of real estate there. So we did our best.
Again, thank you for all those clarifications. I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Warren. Bob Bortschafter?
Is the building heated at all?
Yes,
It is.
yes.
So technically, we need to see a zero cost option, zero energy option for that building as part of the bylaw.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's putting solar on the roof, and it's electric. It's a heat pump or is it gas?
I'd have to go actually back and look at the design. I believe it is gas.
Okay.
Unit heater. I mean, we're not trying to heat massive amounts of space. We're really trying the electrical room itself generates
Yeah, I
a
was
lot of
wondering what-
ambient temperature, so it's really in the winter time, and then we have to provide it down below just to make sure that the pipes don't freeze. So, that's what we've provided. I'm not sure solar panels would provide sufficient,
Yeah, it does. I'm not suggesting necessarily solar panels, but it certainly speaks to insulating it enough that you really don't even need to put a gas heater, and you probably get by with a very small electric resistance panel, and save more money. And I mean, I'm not big on electric resistance, but there's no reason not to make that really tight and such.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to look down. The only other concern is that the classification of the area below may warrant that it has to be explosion-proof equipment, so then it tends to be more expensive to go with electrical equipment than others. So I guess the
Anyway,
question is that, do we just need to
It's not for
submit?
this board, actually, but it isn't this board's responsibility, but it is my other committee's responsibility, so I'm hitting on you now.
All right, let's start. I guess I'll talk with Rob afterwards, and we'll see what we need to submit with regards to that.
That's all I
Bob,
have.
did you have other
No.
comments or questions?
No,
Okay.
that's all.
Frank?
I think you've done basically a great job in a very difficult situation, so. But I just have one question. It has to do with the elevation. We're raising the structure, I guess. How do we decide how much to raise it?
Well, so we're constricted by two things. One, we have to get above a minimum of 3 feet above flood elevation. So by federal mandate, there is a executive order that says we have to have at a minimum, and right now we're at the minimum. We had to design everything to be flood protected to 3 feet above flood elevation, and flood elevation currently is 12 in this area, so that we had to be at 15.
So we're at 15 now?
So, but to keep the building low, what we had to do was we had to put all the electrical equipment and things in the room up above elevation 15, but we kept the roof down and the door so that I believe the top slab of the wet well is elevation 13 and a half, somewhere in there. And so we kept all the louvers and the electrical equipment above elevation 15 so that we could keep the roof down as low as we could go. We tried to flatten the pitch of the roof as much as we were comfortable, because we still have to be able to fit people in there and the generator and equipment and things like that. So we kind of squashed it from above and squashed it from below, and to make it, to keep it as short as possible.
Yeah, I understand. The 12-foot flood map, how recent is that?
It's the current one of 2014, so that is.
2014, so it's current, yeah. We all know that the sea is rising, and they get revised. And every time they get revised, it goes up. So what happens at the next revision when the flood level goes up? What happens to us?
Well, it eats into the freeboard, and so, which is basically that 3 feet of elevation that you're using to protect your facility. And the problem is that there's no one uniform statement of, nobody knows what sea level rise is going to be. There's all kinds of projections, and so
So the requirement, the 3-foot requirement is a requirement. It's a legal.
the federal government says the minimum
Right.
that you have to be is 3 feet above flood. So normally you would design it a foot, and then it depends, you go a foot above flood, and then then it would depend. So that's what it used to be before, how you kind of manage that. And
So
then-
let's say the flood level goes from 12 to 13.
Yep.
So we're no longer 3 feet above.
No, but your
So-
building's an existing building at that
Ah,
point.
okay. All right.
So you've built the building under the conditions of which, it's kind of like you're asking me to predict the future. So, well, so if, it's gonna be, 17 feet in 2022, in 22,
We all-
200 years from now or whatever, I
Right.
can't.
We all know it's going to go up, but the answer is that it's a pre-existing structure,
It
so.
becomes so you built
okay,
under the
fine.
code, and you built
Okay.
under the requirements that were known to you at the time.
Okay,
With those conditions. What happens in the future if you really had to, depending on what the situation is and what the flood elevations were? The first thing you would do is you'd put a flood door on the building.
Yeah.
And the next thing you do is you'd probably have to raise the roof and move your louvers up, and then block below it if we're really talking.
yeah. Was there any consideration given to anticipating sea level rise, and so we
Yes,
don't have to rebuild the
We,
building?
we did an evaluation, but it's a balance between, all the provisions of what we're trying to design around, what we're required to design around, what the neighbors will accept for things, and what the code allows for in terms of height.
I understand.
So we're trying to balance all of those, and the directive we were given at the time when we designed this was from the town. We want to keep this building as, the roof line as low as possible for a number of different reasons. Not only the people behind, but the people that are looking at it from the pond, and so on and so forth, to make it so it doesn't.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ginormous.
Can I jump back in? I thought we passed a bylaw that allowed you to raise to 6 feet and then go 20 feet above that. So in the floodplain, in the coastal area, that when we redid the height, there's a 6-foot provision for raising your house up, and then the 20 feet are above that raised portion. That we weren't penalizing people for making their houses out of the floodplain. I mean, out of the, yeah.
This is Catherine. I don't recall that it was 6 feet, but maybe if I don't know if while we're talking, if Katie
And I don't,
has, if you have access to the.
my
phone.
recollection was that was for residential structures, so
Okay, but,
Yeah.
I just,
yeah, it was a residential structure, but why would we, I hear where Frank's going. We're building it for now, but we know it's gonna need to be, it's gonna be higher in 10, 20 years. Why not build at least a couple more feet to the height now, knowing that at least it'll get us through the next 25 years? 2 feet higher at the top is, I don't think anybody's going to notice that, and I do think it's still within something we're allowed to do.
I think we just need to check what is stated currently in the bylaw. I think, Bob, you remember that that's what we were doing. In 2016, we had to revise the floodplain bylaw based on the new location of the floodplain, which basically, just as an anecdote, puts most of downtown Chatham right in the floodplain. And the revisions we made were for remodeling or remodeling of existing structures and
Wow.
how they could be elevated. So the current bylaw didn't in any way, to my memory, doesn't in any way say, but we're going to put in this fudge factor for the future. It just deals with what we have now. And then when we get new, when the floodplain is revised again, we may need to revise our bylaw again. So, but
No, there
to be
was
honest with you,
I think the definition, and I wish,
I don't have it in front of me, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
but
Go ahead.
what it did was it redefined what the sort of the base height was.
Yes.
And then you, instead of penalizing people for raising their house up to that level and then only getting the extra, if they raised it 6 feet, they could only build their house 14 feet. It allowed them to
didn't do
build
that,
the
yeah.
20 feet above whatever that level was. So, and
Yes.
this is an existing structure that's being redone, so I don't think that that is an issue. I'm thinking that we should look at it and make sure that it isn't something that we could raise a couple more feet just to have a little bit more wiggle room, because 3 feet is asking for trouble within the next 20 years.
Okay. All right. I just think, as I say, I don't have the bylaw in front of me. I do apologize. Jeff, do you have a comment on that?
It's a major design change with
Right.
a project that's in construction right now that would add a significant cost to the project, because we'd have to relook at all of the access to the building right now. So I think there are provisions that you could make that in the future, if you really get to those levels of concern, so even if they adjust the flood levels, you've never seen 12 feet here. 12 feet is well over the structure that's there now, which is 10 feet high. It's a pretty significant event up in the upper reaches of your area. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that I don't think 3 feet at this location is unreasonable, but that's, I don't know, Rob, do you have?
I wasn't aware it was already under construction, that we're giving a site plan review for something that's already being built.
It was, yeah, this one was supposed to go in front of both of the boards, and for whatever reason, it went to the zoning board and it didn't go to planning board at the same time. And I don't have a good reason for you, besides that here we are now having the conversation about it because it was determined that it never did actually go to planning. I was under the impression it had, so.
And it was last August that it went to zoning board. So that was prior to construction. The construction was begun sometime since last August of 2023. Is that correct?
The contract was signed in December of 2023.
All right.
Or, sorry, I think the contract was signed in December of
Yeah,
2023.
you're correct. Ground hasn't physically been, broken for the pump station, but, in addition to the significant cost Jeff was mentioning, it would add a significant amount of time to the project as well. And we're really eager to try to get this operational before long. So we intend to full-blown construction to begin in the fall.
All right. So Bob and Frank, how would you like to, it seems like it's a major design change. What it is trying to maximize the flood mitigation measures that they can take, but it would be a major design change.
Yeah, I guess where I am is that, given where we are, and it's unfortunate, we are, it should have come to us earlier, that we should probably just let this particular issue go.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I wasn't trying to add additional costs. I was trying to save costs down the line, so.
Right,
well,
exactly.
We'll have to wait and see when we need those extra costs, but it doesn't make sense to change that now. On the other hand, I wish we had been given this back in August when we could have had something more concrete to say about it, so.
My apologies.
Rob, I
Yeah,
think I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd just like to apologize on behalf of the town because this was an oversight. I think it was somewhere in the transition between Dr. Duncanson handing over the sewer construction projects to the DPW director, and this was not, it just got lost in the communication. And so we do apologize. We normally would be out well in advance of construction to ask the planning board approval. And, unfortunately it slipped through the cracks. You do have the town's and my apology for that.
Okay, thank you. And I hope I'm speaking for Bob and Frank, and I think our intention is actually just to help you mitigate the flood hazard to the maximum and even anticipate for the future. So, so great. So Mr. Dubus is next. Do you have some questions or comments?
I have a few.
For Jeff
First
and
of all,
Rob?
I'd
Yep.
like to spread a little happiness on this. I think you guys have done a great job on designing this. It's been a long time coming. I've been aware of the problems that pumping station has had over the years. I'm like one of the people that were here when they put it in, and I've seen some pretty horrific or heroic bailouts of that pumping station, all-nighters, 2 or 3 days in a row, trying to keep it working and stuff. And it's about time we get a new one there. And I think what you guys done is great. It looks good. I think it looks good. The people I know around there are going to be happy because you did low profile it. I don't know if any of us are going to be around when the tide rises up another 3 feet, but I'm not too worried about that. Because by then we'll probably need another pumping station anyway, so you'll be designing another one. But I think you've done a good job. The neighbors, I think, are going to be happy with a low profile. I understand that's a tough thing, and I'm sure that the higher you kept that building, the more the people would be upset with their view. So I know you had to go to the bare minimum on everything. The only thing I'm going to say, which Bob didn't mention, was all lights down casting. And but I think you've done a good job with the rock facing and everything. The pictures look good, and let's get on it because we got more people to put on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And my apologies as well to the fact that this slipped through and you're getting it at this time, so.
Thank you. Charlene, do you have questions or comments Robert,
Just,
Jeff?
I want to echo Bobby Dubus's comments. I think they've done a tremendous job with what they have to work with here. I think aesthetically, not that we get into aesthetics, but aesthetically, I think this is a much more pleasing looking structure than what exists there. I showed the plan to my husband and he goes, "Oh, it's about time they did something with that eyesore." I did look at the floodplain, not to, beat that dead horse anymore. There's nothing in there about 6 feet. So I'm not sure where that came from, but I think with what they have to work with, what, the additional 3 feet that FEMA is requiring, it's what we have to work with, and I think they've done an excellent job.
Okay, great. This is Catherine. I just wanted to call out one piece from the staff report regarding parking. It's noted in the staff report that there's no specified number of parking spaces required, but in these cases where the parking is not specifically enumerated, it must be determined by the planning board under site plan review. So can you tell us, Rob and Jeff, is there parking required for employees? And if so, what is required and what have you provided?
Do you want me to start with that, Rob, and then?
Yeah, go for it.
So we tried to, so there's no parking there. I mean, I don't know, there's spaces there. There's no.
Excuse me, there's about 3 spaces there that fishermen use, people that drive down to check the boats use, and it's a free-for-all. So there is no parking designated for
Okay.
anything at any time in any place over 30 years or 40 years that building's been there. They come down, they park, they check the building, and out they go. So I think that's a moot point.
Yeah, so we're
Okay, great.
we're trying to maintain basically what they had. We do encroach a bit more into the, pavement for the walkway, but that's it. The space on the side is the same, and I don't know how else to explain it. If there's an emergency, then the operators find a way to squeeze in there. That's what they've done for the last 50 years, I think.
Okay, great. As long as the board is satisfied with that, I think we can move ahead. So if there's no other questions or comments from the board, I'll just ask if there's anyone from the public who is present or connected online with any questions on this project. I don't see any hands raised. I can't see the room, so I'll just rely that there are none. That being the case, we do have our 3 standard conditions. I did not hear from the board that we need to add any additional conditions besides our standard. So I would recommend that I would ask now for a motion to approve the amended site plan with our 3 standard conditions as stated for the proposal to demolish the existing wastewater pump station and construct a new wastewater pump station based on the fact that the application meets the necessary requirements for approval pursuant to the protective zoning bylaw, etc. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, it's Charlene. I so move.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I second.
All right. So let's do a roll call vote. Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, approve.
Thank you. Bob Wirtschafter.
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Frank Scherer.
Frank Scherer, approve.
Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, approve.
Charlene Greenhalgh.
Charlene Greenhalgh, approve.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. Thank you so much for coming before us, and good luck on continuing and finishing the project.
Thank you very
all
much.
very much for your time.
You're welcome. So the next item on our agenda is actually a preliminary site plan review. This is not a formal, this is a preliminary. for 81 Depot Road, and this is a pre-application. It's essentially for a change of use, the addition of a storage building. So I'll ask the applicant to present, and just a reminder to the board and the applicant that the purpose of this meeting we would vote to accept the pre-application, and just to give the applicant any idea of what we need to see on the formal site plan review in order to give approval to this project. So if the applicant is present, is it David? Is
David Clark
present?
here on behalf of the Genotes.
Great. Please
So-
go ahead, David. Yeah.
So the applicants are proposing to build a garage with some storage above. This being in an SB zoning district requires site plan approval. Because the existing structure is a multifamily structure, so it's not a single-family resident. So it's before you. So proposed garage on second floor storage. Mr. Genotti owns the Fish Pier Fish Market. And so being in a high flood hazard zone, he'd like to move some of his storage of his materials to the second floor of this structure. We're showing an alteration to the parking area. It's actually a reduction in the amount of gravel parking area on the property, so the overall project reduces the site coverage. Nonetheless, we are showing a trench drain across the double doors for the entrance to the garage, because we're basically at the bottom of the driveway from Depot. That trench drain will go to a leach pit, which will also connect the downspouts from the structure. This project has to go to HBDC also, so they'll have a review of the architecture and the lighting. And that's about it. Pretty simple project. So
Great.
happy to answer questions.
Great, yes, and again, a reminder, what our purpose is to give the applicant a clear idea of what we need to see at the formal site plan review. So Warren, do you have comments or questions?
Just for clarification, the number of parking spaces that are there or going to be proposed, I think it's 8, where 6 are required. Where does that come from? It looked to be a duplex.
It is a duplex, so 2 spaces per residential unit, so there's 4 required there, and basically 1 space for the storage area.
One space for the, so the garage is only got 1 parking space in it? Or is
No,
the
it's gonna
entire
have- it's gonna
structure
have
is
2.
storage?
I'm sorry. So 2 per dwelling unit, it gives us 4. The size of the structure, the storage area, requires 1 space, and we have 1 employee, basically, that would run materials back and forth from here to the Fish Pier. So 6, in our opinion, 6 are required, and we're counting the 2 spaces inside the garage as parking spaces.
So it is going to be using, yeah, that's fine. I noticed that there's a magnificent maple tree, as invasive as it may be classified. But is it your intent to try and protect and maintain that tree in its current location?
No.
That's
We'll be
going to come
taking-
out?
Yeah.
Okay. Has there been any discussion with any of the abutters? Really, it's really on the upland side, with respect to the view being impacted?
No.
Okay.
We can build this as a matter of right under the zoning bylaw. We just need to go through site plan review.
Yeah, understood. Well, that's on the other side, you know, it's,
And we have multifamily next door, too, so.
The drainage structure I saw that it is proposed here, is that a replacing an existing drainage
There's no drainage there
plan?
now.
There is no drainage?
No, because it's basically open space. The property slopes to the rear, so we have natural area that absorbs all the
Okay.
stormwater now.
Well, what I was getting at is, has there been a problem that your proposed drainage plan is solving? Or it's just, it's the right time to put in a drainage leach pad?
We're proposing drainage because we feel it's required.
All right, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Warren. Bob Wertschafter?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, Frank?
Just one question. The map we provided indicates that the zone is GB2, but the
Oh,
staff
sorry.
memo says it's GB3. Which is it? Which zone are we in?
Oh, I thought it was the SB. That's down the other end of the street. It's either 2 or 3. It's certainly not 1.
Well, I think the requirements are different between the two. So my only input is that the plan itself should be correct.
Oh,
that-
yeah,
that
well,
we
I'll check
submit.
that
So,
when we file the
all right.
definitive. Thank you.
Anything else, Frank?
That's it.
Okay, yes, you're absolutely correct. Thank you. And Bob Dubus?
I've seen this property before, and I don't see any problem with it, David.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know my feelings on trench drains, but in the circumstances here, it's probably
It'd be difficult to
better-
grade.
Yeah, better that way.
Charlene?
Hi, David.
Hi.
I am only seeing, and maybe I'm just not reading this properly, but I see the 3 parking spaces on the east side of the property, and then the 2 parking spaces right up against the garage, and I'm
Yep.
assuming 2 spaces inside.
You're-
So 1, 2, 3, 4, I only count
Your
7.
eyes aren't fooling you. There's only 7 there, so I'll need to correct that, too.
Okay, I'm going, what?
Okay.
I know I'm losing
Thank you.
something here, but, oh, it's not me. I have no problems with this. I actually worked for the town when they got the variance to make this a duplex, and very supportive back then and very supportive of what they want to do now.
Great. Okay, great. This is Catherine. I'm just going to mention in the staff report, under staff comments, we usually require a full grading and drainage plan. And so just to be sure that you do provide that for us at the formal site plan review. And
What-
it's noted that you will.
What additional grading do you need to see? All the grading is on this plan.
Yeah.
Other than what's there? Okay, if it's complete enough?
I mean, it's such a small site, it didn't make sense to do multiple plans just for a garage. So the existing and proposed grades are on this plan.
And I do see you've got the drainage.
All the drainage
Marks.
and the drainage details are on this plan. Since they have to go to HBDC, I imagine they're gonna have cut sheets on the lighting, and we'll submit that as part of the formal too.
All right,
The only thing else I think I need to do is probably drainage calcs and,
yes,
and a formal narrative
yes,
describing how this complies with your review requirements.
yes. We'll need that. Thank you. Also, I'm just going to ask the board, I think I know the answer, but do we need to schedule a site visit and/or a public hearing? So I cannot see the board, but is there anyone on
No.
the board who wants to? Yes, okay, good. I agree. We do not need either of those. Great. So if there's no other questions or comments from
I have
the
one
board?
question, Madam Chairman,
Yes,
for David. David, your plan says it's GB2?
That was brought up.
But I know, I
gotta
think
check.
it is a GB2, because across the street is all GB2.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would change it to GB3 over there, so I think that you're correct on here.
Well, the Old Harbor Road end is SB, so I'll double check it.
Okay, good. Anything else from the board? I'll just ask if there's anyone from the public who has any comments or questions. And there being none, then what we would do is we would vote to accept the pre-application. So if there's no other comments, I will ask for a motion to accept this pre-application.
Madam Chair, Charlene, I so move.
Thank you so much. May I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it. Bob Dubus.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Warren Chain,
That's Warren Chain, I approve.
Bob Wertschafter.
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Frank Shearer,
Frank Scherer, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, proof.
Charlene Greenhouse,
Charlene Greenhouse, approve.
and this is Catherine Halper, and I also approve. And just to note, as also noted on your staff report, that the applicant now has 4 months in which to submit the formal application. So thank you, David,
You're welcome.
and we'll see you sometime within the next 4 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is an approval not required. And David, are you also presenting on this matter?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
David Clark on behalf of the Lewis Clark Jr. Trust. What you see is a approval not required plan for land off of Chicks Way. We're creating 4 lots and a parcel. The 4 lots comply with zoning, being in the industrial district. 50 feet of frontage is all that's required, and a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. So all the lots are well in excess of 10,000 square feet. Parcel C, there's an interest in one of the abutters of acquiring additional land, so we created parcel C.
David, would you speak a little closer to the mic,
Sure.
please?
Sorry.
I know I'm a little deaf.
So we created parcel C to be conveyed to an abutter, so it does not have the requisite frontage, although it does have the requisite area. So it's not a building lot under zoning. The road was constructed in 2006, I think, and there are already 3 buildings that are being served by Chicks Way. The road was designed in the minimum standards of industrial district, which is a 60-foot layout, and an additional, I think it's 5 inches of pavement where your rules and regulations only usually call for 4. So it's a well-built road, been hacked up by the town of Chatham, but it was patched, and so we believe this meets all the criteria for approval not required.
Great. Any questions from the board? It's an approval not required. We would just endorse it, as you know. Even if we don't endorse it, it can go to town clerk. But any questions or comments from the board, Warren?
No
If you
comment.
want to, okay, Bob Wertschafter,
No comments.
Frank Shearer,
No comments.
Bob Dubus?
I got a comment. Good going.
Yeah,
It's about time that thing gets divided up.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I just wish we'd done it sooner, but things happen.
Charlene, any comments?
No comments.
All right, so I would need a motion to endorse this approval not required. May I have a motion to that effect?
So move.
Thank you, Frank. And may I have a second?
This is Warren Chain, I
Second.
second.
Okay, great. Both Charlene and Warren seconded. So let's vote. Warren
Warren Chain, I approve.
and Bob Wertschafter.
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Frank Shearer,
Frank Scherer, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, proof.
Charlene Greenhouse,
Charlene Greenhouse, approve.
and this is Catherine Halper, and I also approve that we endorse this approval not required. Thank you, David.
Thank you. I had the Mylar with me, but I forgot to get the land surveyor to stamp it and sign it, so I will drop that off. I figured that's what, it's like, did somebody lose it? No, I didn't submit it yet. So I will drop that off in the morning, and then at your leisure, you all can come in and sign it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Great. So the next item on our agenda is our long-range planning continuation with our discussion of the West Chatham Neighborhood Center. For the benefit of the public and the board, I just wanted to do a brief recap and remind everyone where we are in this process. Basically, what we are looking at tonight is it won't be a final draft till we get to 2025, but it'll be our working draft. We're looking at the draft with the so-called new language and comments highlighted. At our last meeting, we had the same draft, barring a few refinements, but the new language and the comments were not highlighted as they are now. For tonight, we just want to review the new language that will be in red and any comments. As all of you know, this West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning district has been a long time in process. I was going to say going back to 2014 when Cape Cod Commission helped us with the Route 28 visioning project vis-a-vis implementing the comprehensive plan along Route 28. I was going to say that that was the beginning of working on the West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning district. However, in thinking of it, I realized that what we're doing here and what the comprehensive plan calls for is simply a reiteration of the very historic and traditional development pattern in Chatham, which started out as the old village, and I'm talking, back in the 1700s and 1800s. The old village was the first village of Chatham, and then it was a series of villages, West Chatham, South Chatham, and North Chatham, and what was in between was farmlands and forest and hunting grounds. And so that is the traditional development pattern of Chatham, was a series of villages which previously were separated by farmlands and hunting grounds, forest. And I believe what the comprehensive plan is seeking to do in the creation of the neighborhood centers and the elimination of intense development in between the neighborhood centers is really just to affirm that traditional historic development pattern and to avoid the development pattern that occurred post-World War II, which we all know as urban sprawl. We did not want urban sprawl to occur in the town of Chatham, but we wanted these distinct neighborhood centers separated by less dense areas along Route 28. It's no longer farmland or forest, but we have reverted that zoning to R20, which was also called for by the 2024 Route 28 visioning study, so that the commercial development and more dense development, residential and commercial, would be focused in the neighborhood centers. And so that really is to implement the comprehensive plan and to reiterate the traditional development pattern in Chatham. This has been a long time in process, really starting in 2014 with the recommendations of the Route 28 visioning study. As most of you know, there's been many layers to this process, and at each layer, we have taken it out to the public and received a lot of public response and integrated into the drafts of the West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning at that time. The most recent layer that was added was the layer of form-based code, and the Cape Cod Commission worked with us on this over, I think, a period of about a year or 18 months to add that layer of form-based code. Also, just a reminder to the board, and that when we did that, we had some education in form-based code with Cape Cod Commission and in other seminars. And the board made a choice. There's a number of different modes, you could say, of using form-based code. One is somewhat skeletal, just kind of the bare outlines of what the zoning, of what the form should be. One is more kind of middle of the road, where we actually specify the forms using visuals and so on. And there is a layer of implementing form-based code that's very, almost completely specified as to what exactly will be built there. The board at that time, and this was now at least 2 or 3 years ago, it was pre-COVID, chose the middle route. So, so what we're looking at now, the newest language that's been added, although it's not completely new, we've reviewed it before, is mostly the language that was reviewed by town council to attend to certain unintended consequences that we saw and to try to mitigate the undesired effect of those unintended consequences. So what I'd like to do is first ask Gloria and Katie to go through the new language, the language in red, section by section with the board and just review it with you. And then if there's any questions from the board, we'll ask them by section. And then when the board's review is complete, we'll have any other comments or discussion from the board. And after that, we'll go to comments or questions from the public. Also like to mention, just in view of time, that we want to limit public comment to 5 minutes, and we'll take it at the end. So I think that's enough of a recap, but let's just review the new language that will be highlighted in red on your draft. And so, Gloria and Katie, could I ask you to take the lead, please?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I just wanted to apologize to the board for the for last meeting's mix-up. As the chair mentioned, you had the appropriate language, but what you didn't have was the track changes, so they weren't highlighted. And so we did realize that it was, when the document was printed for the packet, that you got a version that didn't show the track changes on it. So we apologize for that delay. But what it did allow us to do, or what actually Gloria actually took the lead in doing, was to go through version by version and make sure that all of the language that had been discussed over time has been now incorporated into the bylaw. So I'll ask Gloria if she wants to start with that, and then we'll be able to answer questions as we go through.
Sure, I'm happy.
And if
Can you hear me? Yeah, I guess.
Yes. And this is Catherine. I'm just gonna, I think, Gloria, does it work better for you if you go through all of the items in red for each section, and then at the end of the section, take questions and comments from the board? Is that
I think that makes
the best
sense.
way to work?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Okay, so going page by page, I don't think there are any new changes on page 1 that haven't been talked about, or 2. Trying to think. So on 3, there was a slight change where the word deed restricted was added, so attainable housing, a dwelling unit, deed restricted in perpetuity for a household earning 80 to 120% AMI. We had already talked about frontage buildings. There were no changes there. And page 4, I'd like you all to look at the section on qualified household. There's been a lot of wordsmithing on that. And I'm going to read it. Sometimes it's hard to see with the track changes, but if I read it out loud, maybe it'll make sense, or it'll draw your attention to any issues. So, qualified household. An individual, family, or set of unrelated individuals who jointly rent a year-round restricted rental unit on a lease of at least 12 months and who all occupy that unit as their principal residence, at least one of whom must occupy the rental unit for at least 10 months of each 12-month lease term, or an individual, family, or set of unrelated individuals who own or jointly own a year-round restricted unit and who all occupy that unit as their principal residence, at least one of whom must occupy the ownership unit for 12 months in each calendar year in order to be a qualified household. Does that take care of all of the concerns that we've had over meetings? I kind of like bifurcated the rental versus ownership, and then,
Yeah.
you know, a 12-month lease, 10 months out of a 12-month calendar year.
Is this a good time to comment?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah, as we're going
Yes,
along.
I think it's much clearer. Just a question.
Sure.
It's 10 months for a lease, but 12 months for ownership. What's the thinking
Oh.
behind the difference?
That's a typo.
Okay.
Thank you. For 10
Great.
months in each calendar year. Okay. Oh, there's always
Great.
something. Sorry about that.
And my question is it defined that the income is the whole household income?
So that's part of any type of deed restricted for affordability rental where you have to re-up your verification of income every year. It would be the household income. And that has nothing to do with this bylaw. That's just the regulations around deed restricted for affordability units.
Right, but if I get the house and I'm renting it, and all of a sudden I get a roommate who makes more money, I'm now no longer qualified?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
just want to make sure.
I mean,
But-
you might be qualified. It depends on the.
All right, I mean, there is a
But
possibility.
yeah, it's the household income that's taken into consideration.
But just a point of clarification, you don't have to move out of the house at that time.
Are you talking ownership or rental?
Either
Ownership,
one.
once you get in, your income can rise. And
Okay.
you can get married and you can, bring other people in. But rental is different. You really have to do an annual, update of
Okay.
income information to the monitoring agent, which is usually some nonprofit like HAC or the Housing Authority.
Great.
But remember, even as your income goes up, and I know adding another person is a different story, so your income could go up, but the AMI for Barnstable County goes up every year too, so there's room
Yeah.
to grow.
Yes,
Because
but not,
everyone's
but
growing.
not that's a small increment as opposed to adding a whole
As
nother
opposed to adding someone.
earner.
Right, well, it makes sense because if you no longer need an affordable unit because you have enough income in your household, why would you take up an affordable unit from someone who needs it?
Well, that's very altruistic of you, but it's not reality.
That is reality, though.
No, because if I'm in that, I mean, if my brother lived on Wall Street and lived in a deed-restricted apartment because he couldn't find another one and he wasn't going to move out. I mean, why would you? This is an issue that I'm more concerned about all right, this is another issue. This is not the zoning issue, so let's just leave it. But if you buy it and you no longer qualify for income because you make too much money, you can just stay there.
Right, but you can't sell it for more than what your original AMI that you bought it for. So even though you're making more money, ultimately your equity is going to be capped by the initial AMI that you bought it under.
Okay, great.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Other things on this page, I think we already talked about. I left that comment in, but I mentioned at the last meeting that I did look at the CMR for short-term rentals and the health department's definition and the tax code's definition, and they're all, roughly the same. They're not like exact language word for word, but I think that there's no issue
Gloria,
there.
if I may, I made that comment not because I thought there was an inconsistency or a conflict, but that it's important that laws be in plain language, and so people understand what they are. And so to have a definition of short-term rental, which requires somebody to run to Massachusetts statutes and read through a definition, it's fine. I mean, if you want to go that way, I'm not going to hold things up, but there are differences. I mean, there's 12 exemptions under the state. There's only 4 exemptions under ours. So rather than just go through all of that in detail, we'll go with your proposal. But that's where I was coming from. I was trying to make things simpler and make them understandable to people, just so you know.
Thank you. Changes on the next page, page 5. I added a short little phrase in section 7. So in talking about the payment in lieu, so it says you can provide, the applicant shall meet the requirement by either constructing and deed restricting in perpetuity a dwelling unit, or by a payment in lieu of providing a fractional unit. And I added and/or a combination in accordance with the following.
Okay.
And then the rest is the same. It just gives them the option that they don't have to pay a payment in lieu of 120%. They could build a unit and pay a payment in lieu of 20% instead. The following page builds on that payment in lieu section. So we talked about initially units 2, 3, and 4, but it's possible that someone could build more than 4 units without using a density bonus. Just because you're building 5 or more units doesn't mean that you're taking advantage of a density bonus. And I just wanted to make it clear, and this was actually language that was in a prior draft. I just wanted to make it clear that for additional units and developments over 5 units that result in a fractional inclusionary unit being required, the above percentages apply, with the required payment in lieu for 1 additional unit being 20% of the average cost of a unit in the development. And then I also re-added this same language that we had before. The average cost of a unit in the development shall be determined based on the values provided in the building permit application. And we had many, many discussions about how we were going to set the value of the payment in lieu. And this is something that I think everyone agreed on. And I remember Ryan and I had reached out to Jay, our building commissioner, to talk about this as a potential way of coming up with a value that's fair and consistent for everyone. So, you guys okay with all that? It's not new. It's just, I think sometimes, I don't know, I think that we had so many documents floating around and so many drafts. This is what Katie said in the beginning. I looked at literally a dozen old drafts and cross-referenced everything, and then cross-referenced Pat Costello's comments to make sure that if we took something out, there was a reason we took it out because Pat said so. Or if we left something in, it was fine by him that it was left in. And basically cross-referenced all of those drafts and came up with these few additional sections that are not new but being reintroduced
No,
for
Gloria,
clarity.
just to clarify, my understanding was that our base density was 5 units per acre,
Correct.
which I've always understood through the years here to mean if you got to more than 5 per acre, you were by definition in the bonus density world.
No, because you can have a lot that's more than an acre. You can have a 1.5 acre lot, which means you can build, 7 units on it, and 7 units doesn't mean that you're doing a density bonus. 10 units would be a density bonus, but not 7. This is just to take care of the possibility that someone builds more units than 4 without employing the density bonus. 5 units per acre is just for an acre. So some lots are less than an acre, and
Well-
you can't even build 5 units.
But I'm, for
Yeah.
simplicity and arithmetic, and just say for an acre, right? I said, yes, you could build, we're increasing the density significantly
But
to 5 units per acre,
no, 5 units per acre is the base density.
correct? And that there is a bonus density for increasing it beyond 5.
beyond 5 units per acre, not
correct.
beyond 5 units. It's possible
Well,
that
it's
the
per
lot
acre.
size is bigger than an acre, and you can do
Yes, yes, yes.
more than 5
Yes,
units
yes.
by right.
Okay, so that's the clarification, and it's the per acre is 5 units per acre. If you're doing more than 5 per acre on whatever development you're doing, on whatever size lot it is, then you're by definition in the bonus density world.
If you're doing a density greater than 5 units per acre, correct. But it's
Thank you.
possible to do, right, but it's possible to do more than 5 units without density. And that's what this section takes care of. That if you build, 6 units because you have an acre and a half, then you still have to cover the extra units beyond the 4 that was here in the first place for a payment in lieu. This is just kind of,
Okay.
extending that out. Got it? Catherine? Is
Yep.
that okay? Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Section 8 density, base density.
Gloria, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go
Just
ahead.
one more question on 7.
Sure.
What was the thinking behind going to 20% for the 5th unit?
Because that's one fifth, so a payment in lieu would be one fifth, because the payment in lieu for no density bonus is 1 out of 5 units. So it would be a 20% of the, but it's just, it's like how we
The only
have
reason
for-
I'm certain that you're right, and I'm not understanding it, but for 2, it's 40%. For 3, it's 60%. For 4, it's
It's
80%.
80%, right.
And for 5, it's
It's
20%.
100%. It's, hold on a second.
It doesn't say what 5 is. It doesn't give,
Well, that's because 5 is 100%.
well,
It's not
is
a
it
fractional
required?
unit.
You can't
No,
do 5?
so-
You can always buy yourself out? Or
Yeah.
at 5, you
So
have
that's
to put 1 in?
no. So that's what the base density says. You can build a unit, you can do a payment in lieu, or you can do a combination, build a unit and a payment in lieu. The only time that this bylaw requires a unit to actually be constructed is if they're taking advantage of the density bonus. But there's no requirement under
Then
the
we need
base
for
density
5.
to, yeah.
So we don't have,
We need
we're
another
we're
one for
missing
5.
A5? Is that where we are?
Well, I mean,
Because we
I
have
guess
it,
I could add something for.
we have it for 2, 3, 4, and over 5, but nothing for 5.
Because it's a, because it's not a payment, well, I guess it is a payment in lieu, but it's 100%. I'll work on that to make it clear
Yeah.
that it's, yeah, I mean, okay.
And Gloria, just to
Yeah.
clarify, you're also saying even though it's 100%, it doesn't mean you have to build the unit. You could make a payment in lieu of 100%?
That's exactly what this section says.
Is that what the board has always said? I thought,
Yep.
the payments in lieu were to be the fractional units.
So
But the
for
intent
the
is to make
base
sure you build the
density,
units.
where you don't have the requirement for a special permit to get a greater density, we have never required the actual construction. I think that at some point, whether it's, 5 or 10 units, it might be worthwhile to the developer to actually build it as opposed to giving us a payment in lieu, but it's not required.
So this is Catherine. I just want to step in. So let's look at 5 units and let's look at 1 acre. To be honest with you, I could be wrong, but I don't recall it that way. I thought say it was the standard 5 units, I thought we were going to require that 1 unit be built because it works out. You don't have to go to a fractional unit. It's 20%. 1 unit out of 5 is 20%. And because you don't need to go into that fractional universe, it can be built. And again, I could be wrong, but I remembered that we decided to simply require that it be built. And it was just in the case of the fractional units that we were going to offer the option of payment in lieu.
So that is specifically not what this says.
Yes.
We can change it if you want.
Well, I
I
think
I
not
would just
changing it
ask
would
the-
be the change.
I mean,
think-
it says right from the beginning, mandatory provision of affordable and attainable housing. Any new or rehabilitated development involving 2 or more dwelling units, doesn't cap it, doesn't say 2 to 4. 2 or more dwelling units shall provide 20% of the dwelling units as deed restricted, affordable, and or attainable housing units. The applicant shall meet the requirement by either constructing and deed restricting in perpetuity a dwelling unit, or by payment in lieu by providing a fractional unit. And that's when I added and/or combination in accordance with the following. We've never required the actual construction without using the density bonus.
I wasn't part of the earlier discussions, but what Catherine is suggesting makes a lot of sense to me. That the 5th unit should be income restricted.
That at least, because it doesn't put you in a fraction. And that's why, as I recall, that's why we chose 5 as our base density, is because we could get that even division of 20% equals 1 unit. And we could, in that case, not have to ask for payment in lieu, but just ask for the actual building of the unit. I would ask for the other board members to search our memory banks of what we had agreed to. And Gloria, I'm not saying that what you're proposing is either correct or incorrect. Is there any difficulty, if the board so chooses, is there a difficulty in going this route that when it hits 5 units, that we can require that the unit be built
Yeah.
because
No.
it's not fractional?
Madam Chairman, this is Warren, and I am firmly in your camp on this. This has been talked about ad nauseum, and the whole objective from page 1 is to try and get some affordable housing and to allow developers to not build it just by making a payment doesn't get us there. So that everything you've said about 20%, that meant 1 unit. If you had to build a unit, you had to build a unit. You couldn't buy your way out of it. You want to go to more units, okay, then there's a payment in lieu as well. But
You're not doing the math.
Yeah.
If you build 5 units, it's $5 million. Okay, that's $1 million that you have to give back to us. You're gonna get 5 units, right? If you build 4 units and one of them is attainable, it costs you $4.5 million. And why would you ever go to build 5 units and have to give $1 million back to the town? When the last one isn't gonna cost you $1 million.
But again, there's no payment in lieu involved. If
Yeah, but
only
you
build
got
4,
the
it's-
unit.
So part of our discussion when we decided to do it this way, and we're going back like almost a year at this point. So if you remember, we talked about Cambridge, which upped their inclusionary requirement to 20%, and it actually did start to stifle development, and they did see projects that were below that threshold. So that was at least in my mind, and I know Ryan's mind, as we were working through this, that was a consideration.
In other words, it was incentivizing payments in lieu instead of building?
No, it was disincentivizing building.
Period. Well, this is my concern. First of all, I think there's a need for 200% of income housing in this town. I think we've actually got a whole bunch of affordable housing going in. And now you're forcing the builder to make the houses more expensive to provide money for affordable housing. That makes it less obtainable for somebody who doesn't qualify for affordable, because now that builder has to add the extra cost into the price, and that makes it more difficult for them to build $600,000 units no, they can't build 600,000 units because now they have to contribute $600,000 to the attainable housing. That adds another $125,000 to each unit. So I think this is, I'm concerned the way we're doing this here. And I actually was thinking that we get, I mean, whatever money we get, the other thing I was thinking about, and maybe I'm wrong, but we just get the money and buy down the price of some of the units ourselves. So if they build 2 units and we get 40%, we take that 40% and buy down the second unit to whatever price that is, and that's what it becomes attainable at. So if it was a $2 million units, we now have a $600,000 unit that is perpetually available to whatever that $600,000 income qualifies for. And at least now we have something that somebody can move into. Every time somebody builds something here, we're going to end up with something less than the $4 million condos. So, I mean, if somebody wants to build 5 $2 million luxury units, we're going to end up with an awful lot of money to buy 2 of those, or 3 of those down to be affordable. So I'm not sure this is the best approach now that I've been thinking about it some more. Because of what you've said, that if all the money that we're raising here is going for affordable only, then I think we're pricing these houses to be either very luxury apartments, or attainable, and nothing in between. Just my current thinking on that.
So do you guys want me to keep going through this, or are we scrapping this?
No. It's gonna be in here for now, but we're gonna have to think about it
All
sooner or
right.
later.
Yeah, I do think, maybe I'm just not understanding it correctly. So for additional units in development of over 5 units, that result in a fractional inclusion. So it's true, we don't have that 5-unit piece in there. And then you say the above percentages apply with the required payment in lieu for 1 additional unit being equal to 20% of the average cost. So how is that going to work? I'm afraid I'm not quite understanding it.
I think, or if you just put it all in per acre, it will take the issues away.
But this isn't a per acre thing.
It
This
is.
just
It's two dwelling units per acre, or four dwelling units, or
It's not
4.
tied to any particular acreage. It's only tied to the fact that you're not getting a density bonus, so you can't have more than 5 units per acre. But none of this tells you how many units per acre you're building.
Right.
yeah. Okay, well.
So if you're just
then-
going to build 2 units,
Then it's
they only have to pay 40%
Right.
of the average cost of 1 unit.
correct.
So rather
And if
than
you build
building,
And if
Yeah,
you build that
okay.
1 unit over 5, it's 20%, because we don't have for 1 new dwelling unit, the payment in lieu is, because our payment in lieu doesn't kick in until you're at 2 units. So that's why that 1 unit for 20% was added over there in the other bullet point. I mean, it seems pretty intuitive anyway, but, let me
How about
wordsmith this a little bit.
if you put in that sentence that goes for additional units, in properties with more than 1 acre?
No.
No,
It has nothing to do with acreage.
the +5 does. I'm just saying in that one sentence where you have for additional
can
units in developments of over 5 units.
Greater than an acre where people don't build greater than 5 units.
I understand that, but the question that people are having trouble with is 5 units only can occur, more than 5 units can only occur if there's more than 1 acre.
Unless they use the density bonus.
Right.
But for
they
that
just
one
use the density
sentence that's at the top of the next page, if you just insert for properties with more than 1 acre, additional units in developments over 5 units result in a fractional.
But there can be properties of over an acre where people are using a density bonus and that these percentages aren't going to apply. Like, it's just not tied to the number of acres on the property.
I'm not tying it to that. I'm just trying to get the people who are looking at 5 units and thinking density.
All right, let me think about how I might be able to wordsmith this. Yes.
Madam Chair, can we let Gloria wordsmith at another time? Because
Yeah,
I know how difficult it is to try and wordsmith, while you're on the go.
Yeah.
I'm not so inclined to include, and actually we're dealing with 40,000 square feet, not acre.
Correct. Yeah.
So I can see Gloria's hesitation with adding a size parcel into the equation for that. There may be another way in which to do that. I'm also going to make a suggestion that, I don't think it needs to be in the bylaw itself, but maybe some examples, after this, a note, here's an example of what we are talking about, so that somebody, can see and better understand what we're talking about.
I think using examples for public outreach is really important. It's a great idea.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So that section still needs some attention, but why don't we move ahead to section 8, if that's agreeable to everyone?
Sure. So we have base density. Base density shall be a maximum of 5 dwelling units per 40,000 square feet. It was updated. And then density bonus all zones. I added that subsection heading. Really just trying to clarify language a little bit. Residential developments may exceed the base density by providing at least 25% of new, I added and/or redeveloped to be consistent with the prior section, dwelling units as deed restricted year-round affordable and/or attainable units, and an additional 25% as deed restricted year-round occupancy units that are not income restricted in accordance with the requirements below. And then we talk about up to 2.4 times base density is allowed, up to a maximum of 12 dwelling units per 40,000 square feet. We changed the acre to that. In the next bullet point, I added and provided on site, just to clarify. It does say they shall be constructed as part of the project, but I think it doesn't hurt to say and provided on site. The other bullet point, no additional edits have been made. The bullet point that talks about if the 25% density bonus requirements for attainable units, this has been wordsmithed, so I'm going to read that out loud just to make sure it all makes sense. And if anything jumps out, let me know. If the 25% density bonus requirement for attainable units results in a fractional unit in addition to the whole units that must be constructed on site, a payment in lieu shall be required for said fractional unit based on the average cost of the unit in the development as described in section 7 above, multiplied by the fraction of the unit required under the 25% density bonus affordability requirement for the project. Any questions or comments? Charlene gave me the thumbs up. Anyone else?
And just to be clear, that does require that the units, the whole units be constructed.
Right, this is the density bonus section by special permit. The other talks about not using the density bonus, so we're not requiring them to be constructed unless you're doing the density bonus. I'm happy to revisit that. I think that it's potentially problematic. I think there are other things that are problematic, but we'll get into those soon too. Okay, the next bullet point, if the 25% density bonus requirement for year-round occupancy units without an affordability requirement results in a fractional unit, the number of the year-round restricted units provided shall be rounded up. I think we talked about that at the last meeting. Required deed restricted ownership units shall be included on the site of the project, shall be ownership or rental units shall be included on the site of the project, shall be integrated with the rest of the development, and shall be comparable to, and here's where we added language, comparable to and indistinguishable from market rate units in quality materials and finishes. And then everything else is the same in that section.
Okay.
The next bullet point, I think the next two bullet points are all the same and not edited from prior drafts.
Okay, good. Gloria, as you know, I had a comment about this section that we discussed this afternoon. If we can go back to what page is it? To the second paragraph after point 8. Just this, what we're asking for is 25% deed restricted year-round and an additional 25% year-round that could be market rate. So we're asking for 50% year-round. And what I was asking about is, will this be an incentive to a developer or a possible deterrent that would move them to build a 40B instead of taking advantage of what we're offering here? And might that be an unintended consequence that actually we wish to avoid? Because with a 40B, they just need to provide the 25% affordable units. They don't need to do the 50% year-round. And with a 40B, they don't need to be subject to any of the other requirements that our West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning would require of them. So they're looking at, in my humble opinion, potentially lower cost because they could build, they don't need to look at the form-based code that we're putting in there. They could build a sort of a square apartment or something like, or condos. So I just wanted to call that out. And you mentioned this afternoon there's no data, but could you comment on that possible unintended consequence?
Sure. I'm not sure I could say it any better than you already did.
Okay.
I think the biggest issue is that we really have no data to understand how much the value of these year-round restricted rental or ownership units are going to be depressed below what a developer would normally expect to get. So it's a bit of a mystery. I can tell you that kind of quote-unquote market rate rents in Chatham are falling at like maybe 110% AMI. So like a 200% AMI rent is not something that is actually, found in Chatham. It's not something that the market's really demanding at this point. When we were talking about this with the Affordable Housing Trust and the Community Housing Partnership, in the beginning of this year, there were a couple of apartments that were for rent for, I'm going to say like they were on the market for $2,500 or something like that. Did not rent for months, and ultimately the rent dropped to be, I'm going to say $2,100 or something like that. I'm a little fuzzy because it was a few months ago. But that's a really great example that we don't really have that need for those high rents. And maybe it was the timing, maybe it was the apartments, but there were 3 bedrooms, and there just wasn't that like need for those really high rents right now, or at least they weren't able to rent them. So I would look at this, and when I look at like the year-round occupancy, I think that the need in town is maybe lower than what people intuitively think. And I think that, like I said earlier, the sheer lack of data on that makes it an unknown. So this was something that was added in. I don't think I was really working with you at the time. And if you recall, as a way of incentivizing year-round units, there was originally a section that said something like, for rental projects, if you rent year-round all your units, then your payment in lieu is deferred. Like, you don't have a payment in lieu anymore until the time when those year-round rental units, become short-term rentals or something like that, or you take it out of that situation where we're deferring that payment in lieu. And then somehow it morphed into the requirement of these year-round occupancy restrictions. And I definitely appreciate that, because I think that that's a really great way of addressing community sustainability for these, for year-round occupants. But I think that there's a big unknown with that right now, with how much either the sale price or the rental price is gonna, drop because of that. And developers don't like uncertainty.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to bring it out and just, maybe it's just something, because of where we are in the process, it may make sense to leave it as is and go forward, because what we will do is we're going to do the build-out analysis and the visuals. We're going to take this to the public in a very vigorous way, starting in early fall. And then probably in December and January, we'll collect all of the public feedback that we get, and we'll look at integrating that into the draft that we ultimately send to Select Board to send back to us to hold a public hearing to be put on the warrant for Annual Town Meeting 2025. So since there is going to be another really thorough review and integration of public opinion and comment, we might want to just defer any changes till that time.
Yeah.
But again, it just occurred to me, if I were a developer, we just need to remember that any property owner or developer will come and look at this bylaw and use it in such a way that benefits them to the maximum. And sometimes some clauses that we put in to try to maximize what we are looking for, and we're looking for more affordable attainable units, and we're looking for more year-round units, but that may be a disincentive economically, and they might find a 40B more attractive economically, but that's less attractive to us because it means that the other aspects of the form-based code don't need to be worked into their development. So maybe just something to keep in mind as we move forward. I think Gloria's telling us we don't really have information to make a fact-based decision, but we may need to make some decision on it in future. So, I mean, from my side, we can go ahead unless there's more discussion from the board.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I
Is that
think,
Frank?
yeah, I think you said one of my concerns very, very well, and that is whether we're going to spend a lot of time and effort putting something into place which isn't utilized and doesn't, either because it's not economic or because there's a 40B preferable approach that a
Right.
developer might take. So I know that we don't know, for example, what the effect of a year-round restriction on a unit would be in terms of price and resale value, but we can make some assumptions and run some numbers. And again, even if it's on the back of an envelope, just seeing whether this makes sense for a developer. Because we have to look at the commercial side.
Yeah.
And so far, I haven't seen anything. Now, maybe there isn't anything, but even to throw it in front of a developer or two and say, does this make sense to you? Run it through your software, or whatever you use to decide whether to do a project and see whether this will ever happen. So, anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. I think that's one type of feedback that we will hope that we get when we take this out to the public, that it will include the commercial side of public feedback. That has happened before. We do get comments from property owners and developers and business owners, and as well as occupants, people who will need year-round housing. So we want to hear from everybody, from all the stakeholders. So I think, to address your question, I think that is part of the feedback that we hope we'll get when we take this out to the public.
Madam Chair, one other suggestion, and
Sure.
you have just thrown out a very sensible timetable, but I think it would make sense for me anyway, because I'm new in the process, to actually see on a piece of paper what the timetable is. So, when we're going to have a preliminary draft, who's going to see that draft? Is it going to be looked at by other departments? What kind of outreach are we going to make? Do we have time to make revisions if there are any need for revisions? What further involvement from, third parties we may want, all in terms of making certain that we reach the town annual meeting, because it's taken so long to get there. So my thought would be that we actually produce a timetable, which can be updated, but that we see what we're tracking towards. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, how to say this, because we've done this a number of times before, I and perhaps the rest of the board are pretty familiar with this timetable, but certainly we can map it out, and I'll map it out here, and I'll ask right now. Basically, this is our draft. We don't need to make more revisions now. The time when we'll make revisions is after public review. So this draft will be used as the basis for the build-out analysis that we're already working on the proposal for. That will be done by an outside consultant. And the visuals. When we have the visuals and the draft together, which will be early fall, so we're going to say early September, that is when we're going to start taking it out to the public. Between then and December, that is when we will be doing the public outreach. And I'm going to suggest that we do at least one meeting on a Saturday at the community center in each of those months, as well as have a community listening and information session at every planning board meeting between September, October, November, and into December. And then usually it's around mid-December that we will gather and make a summary of all the public comments that we've received, and then we'll integrate it into the draft between mid-December and the end of January. I think it has to be sent, usually it's the end of January, that our so-called final draft has to be sent to select board for consideration to be included on the warrant for annual town meeting 2025. And then generally it's about February 2025 that we receive that back from select board with their formal request to hold a public hearing, at which point we'll schedule a public hearing, which will be in February. I think we usually don't do it later than March. Again, there can be revisions even, based on the public hearing. Although I think there are some restrictions about not making any substantive revisions after select board has reviewed it. So that's our standard timetable. We are already very far along in this process. This should be tonight we should, in a sense, ratify this draft to go forward to be brought out to the public. I think that's where we stand. And that'll start in September when we have the build-out analysis and visuals for support. So I'm just going to ask Katie if you have more details to add to that timeline.
So we can map that out for you. So we'll do like a little
Yeah.
month by month chart so that it's, because is that what you were asking for?
Yes, yes.
We'll do that so it's
Okay.
really clear to you. And to all of us, it helps to have that visual so that we can like work toward that and hit deadlines and everything. And one of the things I was going to suggest, and something that I have found in previous positions to be really helpful when you're doing zoning, especially zoning that has the potential to be controversial because it's difficult to understand. And I did this in Provincetown when I did our inclusionary and incentive zoning bylaw. We did focus groups. So we didn't just like take a draft and put it out to the public. We had one meeting where we called in and had a bunch of realtors there. We did another meeting where we had developers. And so we got really targeted feedback on our draft from specific user groups before we put it out to the general public, who really are not user groups for this, right? They're just like the general public. So in my opinion, it helps to hear from people who are going to be directly impacted by this before we put it out to the public and incorporate any suggestions that they might have before that. I don't know how much that's going to add to the timeline and whether it's, I mean, I think it's feasible, but I'm going to leave that up to Katie and the chair.
Well, it's
Yeah.
thank you very much. That's very, very helpful. And I think putting it down in writing will be helpful because time flies.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
great. Yeah, and I'll just make one suggestion as the chair, just knowing how the time goes, and that we do need some time to allow the visuals and the build-out analysis to be generated. And it's at that point that as a complete package, we want to take the draft plus the build-out analysis plus the visuals to the public and to any special groups. We have usually approached special groups in the past. In this case, I'm going to say, I think we need to do, my humble opinion, we'll be starting early September. And we need to do it all at once. We can't do special groups first and then the public. I think we just need to start bringing it out all at once because we just have the fall. And then look at the comments that we get all together. And typically we have done it in that manner in the past. We've brought it out to specific stakeholders as well as to the general public at the same time. So I would just suggest that we do that again. And it's definitely good. Yeah.
Madam Chair, with respect, I think the idea of approaching individual interest groups before we go out to the general public is an excellent idea.
So, but we do have to ask the question, do we have time for that? So,
Madam
Hence my
Chair?
concern about having a timetable, which we're trying to work to, so.
right. Charlene?
Madam Chair, I think in all honesty, we can do it concurrently.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't think we need to do one before the other, but I think if we do it concurrently, I think you'll get a lot of very good feedback and information by doing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would say. I don't see any problem doing it concurrently.
Well, the problem, of course, is that if you take it out to a constituency, like a developer group, and they come back and say, well, this isn't working, we won't have a chance to fix it before we go out to the general public. It'll actually slow things down. So that's my view anyway. So.
Okay. Then we also need to define all of the special constituencies. Again, which we've done in the past. There are, developers are one piece of it. We also have to go to property owners. We also have to go to the citizens of everyone who lives in West Chatham. There are also 2 West Chatham neighborhood associations, and that I believe are still active and in existence, and we usually go to them directly. So I think there's also going to be other sides. My personal opinion is I don't see difficulty going to the sort of special stakeholders as well as the general public. I think people involved in the conversation know that it's a work in progress. So, and I would be concerned about the time, because starting in September, we have a limited amount of time. So, anyway, we can consider that as we move ahead. So should we move on to the next section, which is section 9? Is there anything, Gloria, that I don't think there's anything here you need to
I don't think there are
discuss.
any more changes in the documents that we haven't already discussed.
Okay, great. And then there's the use tables at the end. We did discuss briefly this afternoon the idea of how to handle the special conditions in the use table. And Katie, did you want to comment on that? We were thinking of eliminating the special conditions because the special conditions are already cited in other areas of the bylaw. So we're thinking that we don't need to cite it here. But Katie, you wanted to consider that? Did you want to make a comment?
So just to comment, other than the mixed-use development with 5 or more residential units not utilizing the density bonus under the mixed-use section, as well as under the residential section, where we're looking at those requiring a special condition, all of the other items that require a special condition are already spelled out in the bylaw. But most of what you're looking at when you look at those special conditions, they're based on site plan review criteria. And so the question was, do we just want to call out that it's actually permitted because they will require, we will require it to meet our special permit, our site plan review criteria. So the question is, instead of calling out as special conditions, do we just want it as permitted as of right with the requirement for site plan review? So
this would be, so I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the use table. So this would be for everything that we're saying is special condition besides mixed use development with 5 or more residential units, correct?
no, actually
So everything
the
other
opposite.
than that, the opposite way.
Because the other uses in the table are already require special conditions, and they're already spelled out in the bylaw. So they're already,
So lunchroom, tourist home, like that?
yes, those are already
Okay.
spelled out. The question is, do we want to spell out special conditions for these 2 mixed-use development categories? I'm sorry, for the multifamily under residential and then the mixed-use development with 5 or more under the mixed use? Or because really what we're looking at when we're talking about special conditions are items that we look at under site plan review, do we just want to call out that it just needs, site plan
review.
Right. And it's a
And
discussion.
for-
We can add the special conditions, it's just that they're going to basically be our site plan review criteria.
Well, I understand from a simplification of the bylaw that it's not necessary, but for an explanation to the public, it is so necessary. So
Right.
if you want to take it out and say P, you have to have a footnote that says, yes, but we will be looking at these, that it still requires such. Now, I don't know whether that you want to do that or not, but if you put P in some of those places, people are going to go, what, you're allowing that without, so I think that's the issue.
Or we could put SPR, like we could add another for site plan review, and we could
And
change
that's
those.
fine.
But a lot of those, also require
Yeah.
would require site plan review if they were coming before the board, if they were new. So we can look at that. So any other discussion on that?
Well, the assumption here is that special conditions would be as defined in other parts of our general bylaws. We couldn't have special conditions relating to the West Chatham Neighborhood Center for a given proposal as defined by, to be defined, what those criteria might be, but I certainly have assumed along the way, based on discussions we've had at prior meetings, that if we are going to be the permit granting authority, the planning board would need to be determining itself what are the criteria for granting special permits. Not
Special-
just merely
we need-
assume that it'll be the same as for a site plan review in any other part of town. Maybe that's what we'll end up doing, but it's really a question. Are we restricted to not having a discussion here as to what criteria we would choose to utilize in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center that might be different than other places?
So if you'll remember, a few months ago, I think town council was here. We went through the bylaw. We had a conversation with town council about whether or not special permit criteria, not special condition, but special permit criteria, additional special permit criteria were necessary. And he felt that because this bylaw is so prescriptive, that actual special permit criteria are not necessary because there are so many requirements to meet within this bylaw that he did not feel that special permit criteria, additional special permit criteria were necessary. It's all spelled out in the bylaw.
All right, so be it.
But what we're discussing here is special conditions, not special
No,
permit.
I understand that.
Yeah, so for the use table then, for the mixed-use development with 5 or more residential units where special conditions are not defined elsewhere in our protective bylaw, do we want to leave that in the use table as SC with special conditions not defined, or we need to define those special conditions, or we need to put SPR for site plan review, meaning that whatever special conditions we want to apply would be done project by project in the site plan review process. So that's the question I'm asking Katie and the board. Yeah,
Madam
Charlene.
Chair, Charlene, so I'm wondering if at the very top of the chart, accessory structures that comply with the are allowed, somewhere in there say that all of these uses fall under site plan review. Because if you're calling out some and not others in here, people are going to think, well, a bank, I don't need site plan review, but they do.
Right, yes,
So
that's
I
true.
think somewhere just having, a footnote or what have you, that each and every one of these uses, proposed uses, is required to go through site plan review. And I think that would simplify things. And if you call it out at the beginning, whether it's by right, by standard permitted use or by special permit, these still all do require site plan review.
Yes. Okay, so, but then for those, the mixed-use development with 5 or more where we have SC, unless we give some specification to what SC means in those cases, we're just going to have to put that as P.
As a P. Or if, between Katie and Gloria, if they can think of other criteria that would be appropriate that goes beyond the site plan review criteria, then perhaps,
We
there
could
may
add
be
it in,
there.
yeah.
It may even mirror, conversion of existing dwelling to multifamily dwelling. Special criteria already exists for that. Maybe we look at that and see, should some of those be special criteria for the site plan? Or for those uses.
Yes,
could we just, where it is set SC, just say, and I don't know whether we have to be specific, but it could be special condition as specified in other parts of our bylaw, or special conditions specified in this bylaw? I mean, is that the issue that we're dealing with here?
They're all a little bit different. in
I
the way
know,
they're
so,
rolled out.
so just put a footnote that SC means that there are special conditions that exist for this, some of which are in this bylaw and some of which are in the general bylaws, and we don't have to specify every one of them.
Well, they're not going to be in the general bylaws because.
Well, whatever, wherever they are, yeah. I mean,
I mean, in theory, that's good, but we do have to specify. I mean, I would see a footnote, you know, for lunchroom, just citing where in the zoning bylaw that is, those special conditions are put forth, and the same for restaurant and the same for tourist home. And then the ones where they're not cited anywhere are the two, you know, mixed-use development with 5 or more residential units. There are no special, as I understand it, special conditions are not cited elsewhere. So those are the ones where we either have to change it to a P or we have to define what those special conditions are.
then let's just footnote exactly what you just said. For the lunchroom, it's special conditions as defined in this place right here. And in the ones that aren't,
There's a whole special conditions section within the zoning bylaw.
Okay,
So you would
we can
want
just
to,
refer to that, yeah.
you know, it's kind of instinctual that, oh, it's a special condition, let me go find the special conditions. So if we, and I don't have any problem with doing special conditions for like the mixed-use development or, you know, some of the other ones, if it's appropriate. We may already have some language that works for like the multifamily, which I think already has special conditions criteria. So that's, you know, we may be able to utilize that same language for what we're talking about here.
Okay,
Charlene, are you
So-
suggesting that we have in the general special conditions, these new, that we need to just add these multi-use ones that are not previously defined to have them in the special condition? That would solve the issue?
If we feel that additional special conditions beyond site plan review conditions or criteria need to be complied with, then yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd rather not be searching all over the whole bylaw for special conditions if there's one place in there, all
There is
the
one
others.
site. It's
that are-
actually being shown right now on your screen.
Yeah.
Right, so this is, you know, for example, this is a dormitory. So these are the conditions that all need to be met for a dormitory, although dormitory is not something, so I was just trying to get to an area, to one,
Right.
there is one for multifamily, let me just show you.
So let's see what
But
that is, because maybe we just change the heading to multifamily and mixed use.
Yeah.
here,
right, there we go.
multifamily dwelling, new construction.
Yep.
There we go.
Does it have to be new or can it be renovated as part of a project? I would take out
Gloria, it's hard to hear you.
Oh, sorry, I turned off my microphone, sorry. I was gonna say, does it have to be new construction or can it be redeveloped as part of a project? I mean, maybe you just take out the words new construction and just have multifamily dwelling and mixed use development.
I mean, that may be, I don't want to wordsmith it here because I think that's a waste of your time and our time, but, you know, there may be bits and pieces that it may work. It could be multifamily dwelling, new construction, and, you know, or the, comma, West Chatham, overlay, redevelopment, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you may be able to fit, you know, everything in one place.
Right.
Without going through the criteria, I don't know. And a lot of the criteria may already be in the bylaw that we're writing right now.
Correct.
So
Right.
you may
right.
not need to have additional special criteria, in which case then you'd put a P and just have, site plan review.
Okay, we'll take a look at this, at the special conditions that are already in place for the multifamily dwellings in the bylaw as it currently exists, and see how we can work that to incorporate the two lines from the use table in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center bylaw.
If I'll just say if necessary, because maybe what Charlene is saying is correct, that there's enough specifications already in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center bylaw that we can just put it as permitted.
Yeah.
The two multifamily could be just permitted because there's enough specification already in the West Chatham Neighborhood bylaw. But I do think it is a good idea for the other situations where special conditions are already outlined in this other section of the bylaw to just note that, like somehow in West Chatham for lunchroom, tourist home, just to note the section of the bylaw where those are spelled out for reference. So if we can just add that. So, okay, great. All right, so Gloria and Katie, are there any other points from your side about what we've reviewed? And then I'm also going to ask the board for other additional comments on what we've reviewed tonight.
I think we're done, Madam Chair, with our
Okay.
presentation.
you.
Madam Chairman, my head's going
Yes.
to explode here if I don't at least get my core issue out in front of my colleagues here.
All right.
Would
So
you
I was
mind if I
just
took
gonna
about 3 or
ask-
4 minutes?
Yeah, no, please go ahead, because that's what we're doing now is additional
Yeah.
comments and discussion.
Well,
Please
I'm
go
very
ahead.
much in favor of virtually everything in the draft, subject to the things that have come up today. But central to the entire effort here was to provide increased density of housing units in the West Chatham or in the neighborhood centers. We also wanted to promote attainable, affordable housing. And along the way, we've tried to say, well, we'd like people to actually live there, and maybe we ought to figure out a way to have people live there. But as I have modeled out the draft as it is, it seems to me that the incentive is to, from a density point of view, really just to build 4 or 5 units per acre. And never any more than that, because if you do that, there's no restrictions on residency, there's no affordable, attainable housing built, absolutely nothing. And at the same time, a developer is going to say, well, that's pretty good. If I have to make some payments in lieu, well, so be it, but gee, right now I'm restricted to R20 zoning, at least. Now I can put 5 units per acre in there, and no restrictions at all. If we get into the bonus areas, I think the bonus mechanisms look very nice, but it seems to me we've got it upside down. There ought to be an incentive to a developer to maximizing the number of totally unrestricted units that I can build. Market rates, no affordable, attainable, whatever. And that's going to occur if you have all the way up to the maximum of density of 12 per unit, or 12 per acre. On the flip side of that, in order to incentivize a developer to increase the density rather than build the fewest, most expensive that they can, I would like the board to consider the concept of saying the units 1 through 5 all have to be restricted to year-round occupancy. The affordable, attainable piece can be just as specified, but you're not going to be able to build $5 million $2 million condos, whereas before you could have built one or two, but now we're increasing what the density can be, none of which will be lived in year-round, and they're just going to end up being short-term rentals, maximizing the income flow potential for them, which means we are essentially creating a blueprint for a ghost land 50 years from now. There's not that much developable land in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center, really. And so to achieve our objectives, it seems to me we want to try and incentivize developers to go to higher densities, utilizing the density bonuses, all as provided, but also disincentivize them from building as few units as possible because there are no restrictions at all on occupancy or on affordability and attainability. So I would very much, like the board to consider something along the lines of saying units 1 through 4 are all going to be occupancy restricted, so that the units that are built there are going to have people living in them, which is our point. That's the whole idea of the neighborhood center. If we can't ensure that that'll happen, and you can't make people live there, that's true, but that's not the same thing as saying we're setting it up such that almost certainly nobody will live there. They'll all be taken as investments. They'll be run as corporate entities, accumulated and rented out as short-term rentals. There'll be investments for the future, people living in Florida, but nobody's going to live there, we've got enough of that in Chatham. The whole idea here was to increase density, therefore probably making the units more affordable because they're, denser, packed, and then trying to provide affordable, attainable, as well as occupancy. So at any rate, I would like the board to consider the idea of requiring that the base units all be occupancy restricted to year-round occupancy, just as described here. And that the incentive, therefore, is to maximize developers' income potential. They do so by increasing the number of units they build, and they have the greatest number of totally unrestricted units if they go to a density of 12 per acre. And the incentive is to build more rather than less. So, enough said. Now my head won't explode.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask, the comment I'd like to make, Warren, to say this, I want to compliment you on your intention. Your intention is to provide for the town as much as we can in terms of options for year-round housing and for attainable, affordable housing. I believe the board is generally in accord with that intention. That being said, I have to disagree with your thought that the primary purpose of the West Chatham Neighborhood Center has always been to provide housing. West Chatham Neighborhood Center has always been a neighborhood center project, not primarily a housing project. I think as we moved along, in response to the housing crisis in Chatham, which the board took a long time, many meetings to review and to be educated about several years ago, the board chose to emphasize as much as possible the creation of a variety of housing options for diverse economic situations in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center. But it's never been primarily a project to increase housing density. It's been to create a multi-use neighborhood center, to reiterate that development pattern. Your request, and I'm going to ask for more information from Gloria and Katie in response to this, But your request to make the first 5 units year-round required, I think that goes back to the point that I brought up earlier in our review of the draft, that this there's a possibility that that requirement of year-round occupancy may disincentivize a developer, because we don't know we don't have enough facts, but in general, a year-round rental, it may actually bring in less income for the developers. So we need to look at that. I'm going to ask, before I go further, so I think it's related to the point that was brought up earlier that was discussed with Gloria and Katie, and also Frank chimed in. But I'm going to ask for comments from Gloria and Katie on what I just brought up, and on Warren's idea of creating the first 5 units as required to be year-round occupancy. Could you comment on that? I'm going to ask Gloria and Katie for comments.
So my first instinct, just in conversations that I've had with town council, was that in order for us to be able to provide, like, we were providing an incentive, and that's why we were able to get some year-round restrictions. I don't believe town council would say that it would be permissible for us to restrict any type of initial, the 1 to 4 dwelling units. Again, it seems a little backwards when we're trying to do an incentive. But I do know that that was a specific comment made by town council. Do you want to go through
Yeah,
the spread?
I mean, that's what I recall too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the between here, because I tend to agree that the incentive structure right now is probably not going to work, but I think we already agreed that we were just going to go ahead with what we have now and put it out there, and that we will have to discuss this and other proposals. I mean, the incentive structure could be structured so that the first one, you get the incentive with the first one being a year-round, as opposed to the last one. So I think there are solutions, but it's too late today, and we already agreed that we were going to put this out as our first attempt, but with an understanding that when we go to builders and developers and other people, we're going to come up with other ideas and maybe changes to this. So I'm not ready to discuss that tonight.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
it's
Charlene.
Charlene. I think we need to move forward with what we have in front of us. I do not think it's lawful to require that the 5 dwellings be year-round. As much as we'd
Yes.
like to be able to do that, it's not lawful. You can't do that.
Yes, that's what I recall.
So, yeah, so I would very much like to move forward, and again, thank staff and you, Madam Chair, for your diligent work on this document. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the build-out analysis and the schematics that are going to be drawn up. I think that will be extremely helpful in moving forward.
Okay, good. Yes, I think I would agree with you, Charlene. As I recall, again, I'm just going to basically repeat what Charlene said. As I recall, town council has given us the opinion that it is not lawful, that we can't put in those restrictions except as part of something that's incentivized for increased number of units, but we can't restrict it in that way according to law. And I think what this is about, this is just my humble opinion, is that when we're dealing with zoning law and planning, we're walking on the junction point between what is required or desirable for the community, and as planners, that's what we are trying to implement. And on the other side is individual property owners' rights. And there are certain rights that by law we simply cannot infringe upon. There are also considerations, as we've discussed in a variety of on a variety of points tonight, just economic considerations. We wish to put into place laws that would give us maximum of this and maximum of that. We would like to do that for our community, but if nobody's going to build them, it's not going to work. So we might need to scale it back a bit to make it financially workable for property owners and developers, which might mean that we'll get, less, of what we might like ideally, but we will get projects that will be built and will contain some year-round and some affordable, attainable units. And that might be a kind of compromise that we need to look at. Unless, of course, we get someone who just loves Chatham, has a lot of money, would just like to set up, would just like to do it. If they do it by choice, if the property owner or developer does it by choice, and sometimes that happens. It's just a question, there's a limit to what we can require by law. So,
Madam Chair?
yes,
If I could,
Frank.
yeah.
Yeah.
What I recall from the legal opinion is that we can use the special permit mechanism in certain circumstances. And if those circumstances include benefiting the town in terms of year-round and affordable housing and objectives like that, that could justify using the special permit. He was very reluctant, if I recall, that we could do that, except through the density bonus approach.
Right.
And so if we wanted to go down this other route, I think we'd have to go back to council and see what's possible. But I think it's a mistake to leave the impression that it's simply unlawful. The answer is I don't think that we know whether a particular approach is lawful or not until we go back and ask the question.
Okay, it's my impression that we have already asked that question of town council and we've received the answer. But we can revisit it if we need to, certainly, and ask it again. But that's my impression, is that we have asked that question and received the answer. So, but what I want to put before the board now, I want to, if we need to take a formal vote, we can, but we've seen there are some open issues, and we know that there will be more open issues when we bring this to stakeholders and to the public. But I'm hoping that the board is satisfied that we can we can move this forward and proceed with the build-out analysis and the visuals, and then with a target date of early fall, which is when we're anticipating that the build-out analysis and the visuals would be ready, that then we'll be able to start bringing it out to stakeholders and the public. So I want to get a sense if the board is willing to proceed with what we've got.
I'll start, yes.
Okay, good.
Frank
Yes.
says yes.
I say yes.
And Frank is answering yes, and
Yeah,
And
I'm
who is
certainly
that?
willing to go forward with what we have.
I'm on it.
okay. I think moving forward is a great idea. I think we need to do that to get it to 2025. And I think we will get more sort of useful feedback when we have the build-out analysis and visuals. So, okay. All right, good. So, so I don't think we need to take a formal vote. I think the board is in agreement that we'll move forward with this draft and move forward with getting the build-out analysis and the visuals. And then with the target date of early September, we'll look at what we've got and we'll start bringing it out to the public. Katie and Gloria will provide the written document of the schedule that Frank, you requested. I think that, yes, that's going to be very helpful. And I think we'll call it a wrap.
Madam
So
Chair?
if there's no, Yes, Katie.
So just to be clear, the timeline that we have given the consultant for the build-out analysis is I think, the second meeting in September. So I just want everybody to be clear. We may have a meeting with them
Okay.
beforehand. Staff certainly will, but we're moving ahead with probably signing a contract later this week. The quotes were just due this past week, so I just wanted to give the board that information so that that's a
Great.
clear expectation about the timeline.
Katie,
And
there was
then the-
also, I believe, discussion about using our consultants to try and come up with some of the visuals that we might use to sell this to the community.
Right, so actually, it's not, it will be a different consultant, but we've had a conversation with Union Studio, and they're willing to provide visuals, but they would be based on the build-out analysis, so we haven't, we'll move ahead with that once the build-out analysis is done.
May I just ask a question? Since we have a target date for the build-out analysis to be done, again, our time is actually somewhat short. We have September, October, November, December for public outreach. Can we put the contract in place with Union Studios so that as soon as the build-out analysis is available, they start on the visuals? So that we don't wait till the build-out analysis is done, but it's just ready to make a transition immediately.
Sure, I can
Is that
I can reach out to them this week to just make sure that they're aware of the timeline.
Yeah, that would be great. And then if we can get an idea from Union Studios when the visuals will be done, that would also be great. Okay, so great. So I did say that after the board completed its review, that I would ask for any public comment on the West Chatham Neighborhood Center. So if there is anyone from the public either present in the room or connected online, I don't see any hands raised online. Is there anyone in the room? I can't really see the room.
There are no members of the public in the room this evening, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. So if there's no further public comments, then I will move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll
and
second
ask for
that.
a motion. Okay.
Actually, you could also move then.
Yeah, I'll ask for a motion to move it.
So moved.
Charlene moved and Frank seconded. So let's do a vote. Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Frank
Frank
Scherer,
Scherer.
approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Charlene Greenhalgh,
Carolyn Greenhalgh, approve.
and this is Catherine Halper, and I also approve. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Let's note the time as 7:43 in the evening. Everyone, please enjoy the rest of your evening.